Hi, thanks for being here. I just have to talk into the mic so that we actually capture it on the video. Thanks for coming out tonight. It's hitting that point in October where everybody's like, why is it dark? I'm tired, let's go home. So I'm glad you came out to visit us and to come see the great experts about backyard chickens from Millstone Farm tonight. There are handouts in the back from the folks here with information that you'll be able to take home. And we also have a handout for upcoming programs for the rest of the month. So you can mark your calendar, put that on your fridge, and come visit us again. And of course, we run the programs in the library on a shoestring budget. And I try very hard to be a good steward of that budget. But if you enjoy this program tonight and you have a few extra dollars left over from your coffee this morning, I hope you'll put it in that box back there so that I can do more cool stuff like this. Thanks and enjoy.
I wish I didn't have to use the mic, but they want to record it. Yeah. So unfortunately, it makes me uncomfortable, but I'll do it. These are handouts that I can't give you. I'll go up there in a minute and do that. But you're welcome. There's so few of you if you want to pass them around. Henderson's Handy Dandy Chicken Chart is really amazing. It's got every kind of chicken, what color eggs, how many they lay, a lot of little. And then this one is just a resource list. And if any of you do want those, they're here. If you don't have a pen, I didn't bring any in. Did you? And you can put your name on the back. I can email those to you. Your email? Yeah, no, that's a highlighter. Does anybody have a pen they can stick here with me? All right, just put it, if anybody wants me to email these handouts, but you're welcome, I can do that later. So, Jackie's got Doris with her. I'm gonna. So Doris is here, Doris Day, and she's she crosses the road all the time, Jackie said, and the reason why is because there's bamboo on the other side. She likes bamboo, and it's not a joke. No, I can do it because I've got to stand here anyway. Thanks. And anyway, so backyard chickens. And this is sort of a shortened version. I tend to put a lot on the screen because then you look at that and not at me, which I much prefer. And we're out of context here. If you catch us on the farm, it's a lot more fun. And we do tours on the farm, and that's really great. But it's hard for me to be out of context. So we'll get something out of it, though. At any rate, the handouts don't have everything in it, but feel free to ask questions, and we'll do that at the end, too. So obviously you're all here because you either have chickens or you might want to have chickens, and there's lots of reasons. Eggs, obviously. We brought a few with us today. Different kinds of chickens lay different color eggs. Fertilizer, they keep the weeds down, they keep the ticks down, and bugs in general. They rototill the garden. That's a really cool chicken tractor there on the bottom there of that picture that someone built, really fancy. When they're done with each bed in their garden, they put this little chicken tractor over the bed, and the chickens cleaned it up and stirred it up, and then they could just smooth it out and plant it again. And that probably cost a lot of money, but it's a fancy one. And there's some cleaning around the edges of another garden. They're good for you to eat, especially if the chickens are on grass, which ours are. And somebody mentioned their children or your grandchildren doing the chores. Kids really love to do the chores. It's like an egg hunt every time, they go out and collect eggs. And it also instills some responsibility in the kids. Our meat chickens and our laying hens are both on grass. They're all grazed. And we just got AWA approval, which is animal welfare approval. And that means that our animals are indeed on grass. They're outdoors. There's not a room where there's a door that they could go out if we opened it. You see a lot of things on the eggs you buy in the store, cage-free. There's one we saw that says, they have a porch or something, or I don't know, omega-3s, vegetarian, it's so much greenwashing. But if you've been to Millstone Farm, the chickens are out there on grass and moved all the time. And so the grass-fed chickens or grazing chickens are really, really delicious. And the eggs are good for you and high in omega acids that are good for you and taste good. So the types that people raise for meat are most often Cornish cross, and I have that in red with an asterisk because you can look up on the web Cornish cross are white birds that virtually everybody who raises meat birds raise, because they grow to about 6 pounds in 7 weeks, something like that. And they're like Frankenbirds. It's like Jiffy Pop. And they get so big so fast that they can't walk. They're built to have giant breasts, which is white meat, and that's what they think everybody wants. But they're so gigantic that they literally just sit on their breast all the time, and they get all blistered. And so they're really horrible birds. They're so genetically modified that they can't breathe, they can't walk. But that's what everybody raises who raises meat birds. And even certified organic can be Cornish cross. And so if you are buying meat birds from a farmer, you might want to ask what kind of breed it is, and if you're interested in buying a breed that can walk and fly and actually peck and go out on the grass. And there are several breeds that do that. We raise Freedom Rangers. I'll show you a picture. Other good breeds that are heirloom breeds are Delaware, barred silver cockerels, which is like a barred rock, but all male. That's why it's cockerel. Cornish game are great for meat. New Hampshire red, Jersey giant, black Cornish, which are great foraging birds. And La Belle Rouge is one from France. It's really odd looking. It has no feathers on its neck. It looks really weird, like it's been pecked, but they're delicious and fabulous, but they're hard to get. So you can buy chickens, but if you're buying from a hatchery, you want to buy NPIP free, all those things, and it's in your handout. Barred rocks and buff Orpingtons are good dual-purpose birds. In other words, they lay eggs, brown eggs. They're really nice birds, and they're also pretty decent for meat. But most of the laying birds are not great meat birds. So before they get there, you want to make sure your coop is draft-free. It's been not disinfected, like you don't have to have a mask on and a white robe, but you want to make sure it's clean. You need to have a heat lamp ready if you're buying chicks. 95 degrees for the first week, dry litter, have something to put on the ground, shavings, newspaper. I guess we use shavings, don't we, Jen? Most of the time. And something for them to roost on, even when they're babies. They want to get up off the ground if they can. Feeders, waters, you can get them online or at the feed store, Agway. So get ready before they come. You can hatch them yourself if you can get fertile eggs from somebody. We send eggs to different schools, New Canaan Country and a couple of other schools, hatch out eggs, and the kids come and visit later and meet the chicks. Freedom Rangers don't really breed true because they're a cross, and so you don't necessarily get Freedom Rangers if you breed them. You can buy day-old chicks from a hatchery, hatch them yourself. And then if you want laying birds and you don't want to raise them, you can buy 16 to 20-week-old pullets. That's what a pullet is, a bird that's ready to start laying. And they're usually about 16 to 20 weeks. And that's typically in September because you want to start. Now this I'm not going to go into. Just it's about the white breeding birds, and same as the turkeys, white turkeys. You always see white turkeys. Those are the ones that are commercially raised. It has the same problem. They've been bred for large breasts and very fast-growing birds, but they can't breed and they can't walk. And so they have to be artificially inseminated. And it's just typical, though. That's because everybody wants, it only takes a lot fewer weeks to raise them, so the farmers are spending less money on feed. Our birds take between 11 and 14 weeks to raise, but they're out on grass all the time. So it's just worth looking into, but some of that's in your handout. So you want to check your zoning, make sure you're allowed to have chickens in your neighborhood. If you're in New York City, you can have chickens, but not a rooster. But you're allowed to have chickens now. Choose your breed and talk to a farmer if you know one, or do your homework. And decide if you want a dual-purpose chicken or one for just eggs, or both. And that handy-dandy Henderson's chart will tell you a little bit about that. If you want a lot of eggs, if you want white eggs, brown eggs, you might want to mix it up. You can use your laying hens for soup or stew, but they won't have very much meat, and they'll be tough. By the time you kill them, it's 2 years usually, they really aren't tender anymore, and that's where coq au vin comes from, you know, the old roosters. And so you want to check make sure they look healthy when you get them. Sometimes if you're buying from a hatchery, they'll send a little packet of probiotics, or you can feed them that yourself. You can get it if you take probiotics. You can put a little honey in their water. That usually gives them a little boost. I always put brewer's yeast if I'm raising them on their feed when I first get them. And brewer's yeast has some really great stuff in it that boosts them, including manganese, which hatchery chicks very often lack because they're commercial chicks, and it's a lack of it in the mother hen that causes this disease where their legs are all splayed out, but we haven't seen that because we get our chicks from a couple of small hatcheries. Make sure that you have all your stuff in order, that the coop is rodent-proof, or wherever you have them is rodent-proof. We use 1/4-inch hardware cloth. Hardware cloth is metal, wire cloth, and because even 1/2 inch is too big, because rats and mice can get through that. So 1/4 inch is best. Limit how many people are in and out of there because they carry germs, and it doesn't, again, have to be sterile, but just keep it clean, and you don't want a lot of people running around. If you're raising several batches of chicks, we always power wash the brooder and everything in between batches so that it's really clean before we start it. We raise meat birds every 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So we get a new batch of meat birds and we start, so we don't raise a lot at once, it's 50 at a time, only when there's grass, and then we stop for the winter. But we always sanitize. So that's the La Belle Rouge over there, the chicken with no feathers on its neck. It looks really weird. So things to know. Best time to hatch eggs, if you're going to hatch them, is in the spring, same as buying chicks, because then they're feathered out and they start laying by September, because then come winter, they stop, their laying goes down, the level of laying goes down. So you want to get some egg production out of them before the winter hits. When the days get shorter, they stop, they slow down in laying eggs. And also, nature, a chicken is going to lay her chicks or hatch out chicks in the spring because she's got a warm summer to feed them and lots of food, and it would be silly to hatch them out in November, so nature tells them to do that in the spring. So we start everything in the spring, and as I said before, our meat birds take 12 to 14 weeks. The carcass, it's not as big breasted, but it's really good depending on the type we raise. The Freedom Rangers are great. And people literally fight over them. We sell out in the first minute when we put the email out. We only sell by email. We send out an email and they're gone. You have to do like free tickets to Mick Jagger backstage, and send, because it's first come, first serve. And so they're always gone. Same with we have pork shares and turkeys. If you're on our email list for turkeys, they sell out instantly. And people just come, they buy them. They come, they pick up their chickens on our system, put their money in a little box there. It's just like people used to do, and they take the chickens home. It's great. But we have such limited amounts that we never have enough. So Henderson's chart, it's on your handout. Standards are Rhode Island Red, Plymouth Barred Rock, Americanas, which is what Doris Day here is, and they're the ones that lay green or blue eggs. And Jackie will show you Doris. Doris is a pet. And our chickens aren't really pet. Buff Orpingtons are probably one of my favorite birds. They're all red. They look like Rhode Island Reds, but they're very mellow. They're good-natured, and they're a good dual-purpose bird. Big brown eggs, and they're decent meat birds. And they're also friendly. It's nice to have a friendly bird. That's the barred silver cockerels. They look like a barred rock, which is what they are really. And that's the Freedom Ranger, which is what we raise now. Both great on grass, and both really, we just had the best luck this year. Our chickens are super healthy. The other thing about the Cornish crosses, they're so weak that they often have heart attacks. So they just keel over, and it's usually heart failure. They just die.
Doris.
Huh? Oh, sorry, Doris. Cover your ears, Doris. But she's not a cross. So if they're healthy, obviously, they have bright eyes. Their wattle is colored nicely. They have beautiful color on clean feathers, clean nostrils. They eat and drink all the time. Their droppings are gray with a white cap. It's a little mountain, not runny. Their legs are smooth and not scaly or flaky. And she's a really healthy chicken because she is ranging. If you're going to incubate, these incubators, like you see in that picture there, are great because they have a window on the top, and it's great for kids. And that one has an automatic turner, so you don't have to turn them manually. Because if you don't have an automatic turner, you can buy a little tiny one for 6 or 7 eggs. And this one, I think, holds, I forget what, 40 eggs or something. And that's what you usually give the kids who raise them or hatch them at schools. And the instructions are in there. I forget how much they cost, maybe $100. And they're really great. It's so automatic, and between 99 and 102 degrees. There's a chart in your handout for hatching and brooding. It tells you what to do each day, and if the kids are doing it, it's good to have them check that they've done that every day. And humidity, it's really obvious. Only incubate eggs of average size. Extra large don't do well, small don't do well, and if they look like that, don't try and hatch it. That's an egg. So you want to set your incubator up 2 days before you get your eggs, because you want to make sure the temperature stays consistent. You know, it has a thermometer in it, and you want to keep it at about 98. And so it takes a while to adjust the little temperature thing on top to get it right. You know, you don't want it going up to 105 or down to 90. So you have to play with it. So start it up a couple of days ahead of time. Make sure it's working right, and you can get the temperature right. Don't wash the eggs when you get them, or if your farmers tell them not to wash. You can't buy eggs at the store because they've been washed, and try and incubate them, and you don't know if they're fertile anyway. So if we're going to hatch eggs, we send them out unwashed. And if your nests are clean, which they should be, they look fine anyway. You know, you have to keep your nest clean. So brooding is once they've hatched, 3 to 6 weeks of brooding. You can use a cardboard box. One friend of mine uses one of those playpens with the mesh sides, you know, and anything that contains them, and keep them away from your pets. Infrared light, red infrared heat lamp, not the white ones. The white ones are too stressful. The red one reduces stress. If you've got a white heat lamp on them all the time, it's like interrogation, you know, 24 hours a day. So don't do that. Just use the red ones. It reduces stress. And a feeder and a waterer. It's a mason jar waterer when they're little. Whatever you're going to use for litter on the ground. Food, there's chick starter, and something they can perch on or brood, or what's the word? Roost on, thank you. If you have pets, especially cats, get something to cover it with, because they're very curious, and you know they'll want to check out the chicks, and your cat might want to do more than check it out. Feeders and drinkers near the heat source for the first 2 days. If you only have a few chicks and you want to get them started really fast, you can dip their beak in the water when they get there, and then in the food, and the food sticks to their mouth. And you could also put marbles in the water and the food, and they look at it, especially for turkeys, because they're a little slower, and they peck at that shiny little marble, and then they get that they're drinking and eating right there. And the more you handle them, if you want a friendly chicken like this, you just have to handle it. And she's like she's a pet. Ours are not at the farm. We have a lot of chickens, and so they're really not pets anymore. We have some good stories about a couple that were really cool, but we don't really have a lot of time. And so starter feed, which is what you would start them on, and we buy our feed at a co-op, a farmer's co-op in Connecticut. It's not certified organic, but 90% of certified organic grain comes from China now. So it's not really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for feed that we know is natural, and that they haven't used any spray, and it's not genetically modified, and that's good enough for us. It doesn't have to be certified organic. But because if it's coming from China, I'm really not interested. It just takes too much energy to get it here, and who can trust it anyway? But that's really crazy that certified organic feed is coming, 90% of it is coming from China. But so is the fact that we throw away half our food, and 60% of the seafood that's caught gets thrown in the garbage. So it's a lot of crazy stuff. Anyway, when they're about 28 days old, 4 weeks, the temperature should be down around 82. If it's nice weather, it could be less than that. As long as they're feathering out and they're not huddling under the heat lamp, they're fine. The temperature thing is just a guide, because they'll tell you if it's too hot, they're going to run away from the heat. This is our setup. Our brooder, it's terrible pictures, but the brooder box is in a little shed. Then they move to a little open area in the same shed down below. It's kindergarten. Then we have an area that's bigger, and they can go get outside, and they're fed by a water barrel, and they learn to use that little bar there to drink from, and it's really clean. You know, they're not stepping in their water, and they learn really fast to do that, the pigs. So if they're too cold, they're going to huddle under the lamp. If they're too hot, they're going to get as far away as they possibly can. And you'll see that. And then you'll adjust your lamp, either raise it up or lower it down. And really make sure it's secure, because if you have one of those clamp-on lights, they can slip. So I'd put duct tape or something to make sure it's not going to slip, because if it falls, it could be a fire. You know, you just want to be careful with a heat lamp. And that's what they should look like, just right. So as they get bigger, they need more space, obviously. When they're 6 weeks old, they usually are feathered out. The roosters will start to crow at about 6 to 8 weeks, and they'll go, really bizarre little noise. And that's when you switch their feed to grower pellets or grower feed, which is lower in protein than the starter feed. And then when they're pullets, as they grow a little older, at about 20 weeks, they're called pullets or young hens. And like pullet comes from the French poulet, and that's typically used for chickens only. And so then you change their feed again down to a lower protein feed for laying hens and laying rations. And you can also feed them kitchen scraps. They need at least 8 inches of roosting space to roost at night. And the nests, everybody knows with chicken nests, you can buy them ready-made now. It's great. And they should have at least 3 feet each in the chicken house at night. You know, if you have to get them a little more crowded, it's okay, as long as they can get out and move around later in the day. But don't crowd them, because then they get really stressed out. So, and they don't lay as much when they're stressed out, you know, just like everybody else. They're not as productive. So that's our newest meat bird setup, the one on the, where is it? On the bottom left. Those are our latest meat bird coops, and they get moved typically about twice a day, Jackie. And that way they're always on, you can see how plush the grass is. They're always on fresh grass. They should never be where they've been pooping. So we're constantly moving the meat birds, so we don't want them eating where they're pooping. And that's why we don't have to use antibiotics. And Mary worked with us this summer, and the birds are healthy. And, you know, it's a lot of work, but that's what keeps them healthy. You don't, if they're standing in the same spot all day, they're obviously going to be, it's going to be funky. And unless you're constantly cleaning it or putting down new litter, they're going to be eating where they're pooping. And that's really when they get sick. And it's just causes lots of problems. We use movable, portable electric fencing. That's what that white stuff is, solar chargers. It's really not that hard. These ones on the lower left that Johnny built were really cheap. I think he spent about $200 each to make them. And the little one on the right bottom there is really cool. You can buy them everywhere now. When I first bought that one, it was from England. It's a Forsham cottage ark. And, but they're really cool. It has a staircase. They go up at night into that. You pull the staircase up, and then you move it again the next day. It's got wheels that flip down. You can move it to a new spot the next day, and then you let the staircase down and they come out, and then at night they go up. And so you can move, if you have a small lawn and you want to have just 2 or 3 chickens, I wouldn't put any more in that than that. And you can really still move them around. So that's another style of our meat bird coop. They were really heavy and hard to move. That's why we've changed that. Down on the bottom right is one of our laying coops, laying chicken coops. It's our Coupe de Ville. The health issues, coccidiosis, worms, pests, they get mites and lice. You'll see it. If your bird is sick, you'll know it. And again, if you're on grass and they're moving around and you're keeping your coop and your nests clean, they're not likely to get sick. And I don't think we've treated our birds for anything in a long time. Plus, we keep a closed flock. We don't normally take our birds anywhere. This belongs to one of the young women who works for us, and she was nice enough to let us borrow her today. But we do have a closed flock with our sheep and all our animals. They don't go anywhere. We don't bring in other animals, so that they're really healthy. But you'll see if they're not well. Dust bath. Dust bath, wherever the chickens have been, there's holes in the ground. We have to fill them in after we move them, because they dig a hole and they dust themselves with dirt. And if they don't have a way to do that, you should provide them with like a black bin with dirt in it so they can dust themselves. And that's how they stay clean, and it keeps the mites and the lice off them. Yeah.
And why wouldn't they have a way to do that?
If you have them in a coop or on a ground that they can't dig up, or if they're indoors all the time, or they're on, wire mesh, people just don't have chickens that go out.
But if you put them on grass and the grass is like really thick, they'll be able to dig it up.
They do dig it up, and we always have to fill the holes in. As soon as they're moved, we have to fill in a bunch of holes. You'll see all over the farm we've got new compost and seed, because they always dig holes. And it's really cool. You watch them, and they're bathing. And if you let them be chickens, they take good care of themselves. Okay. You just have to give them all the ingredients, and they're really good at taking care of themselves. So sick chickens, obviously, all those things. They won't be eating. It's obvious that you have a sick chicken, and that's in your handout, all those signs. When we do this workshop at the farm, we usually go outside and we're in context and we can show you things, which is a whole lot more fun and easier for me too. But so this is sort of an abbreviated version, and it's not as, I don't think it's as good as just seeing it all. And we usually do a chicken workshop in the spring. So if you're on our email list, you can go to the Facebook page, Millstone Farm Wilton, and there's a way to contact or to send. Yeah, Jackie does the Facebook page, and get on our email list, and then you'll know if we're having a workshop or get on the turkey list, whatever. So obvious, this is such common sense to have a few chickens, good sanitation, fresh, clean water, fresh feed, grit. They should always have grit, something that they can, it can be oyster shell, you can buy grit, and it's called grit. And chickens digest in their gullet here. They don't have a digestive system, so the food gets, the grit and stays here and it gets broken up and then it goes through their digestive system. So they need grit to digest properly. We add minerals. I like to give them kelp meal, and crab shell is great for them. They really love it. You want to have a coop that's that a predator can't get in, no matter what, from the top or the bottom. Hawks are one of our worst predators, and weatherproof, obviously. Space to roam, plenty of places to nest. I'd like to see one nest for every, it'd be nice if one for every, I don't know, 5 or 6 birds. I don't know how many we have per bird, but it's nice that they all can get to a nest, because sometimes they fight over them if they don't have enough nests. So constantly moving them is great, because they're never eating where they're pooping. That's the key for us to healthy chickens. If you have a stationary coop, keep it clean, rake it, put down fresh litter. You can put down dry leaves. If you're raking leaves, just put them in big bags and keep them dry, and use that as it's a great way to bed your chickens or any other animals. But you have to keep them dry all winter, stash them somewhere. We use leaves for a lot of things at the farm. Roosters. We do keep approximately 1 rooster for every dozen chickens. This is the laying chickens. All the meat birds are cockerels. They're all male, as they grow faster. So we raise, once in a blue moon there might be a female, but I think they're pretty much cockerels. Yeah. Anyway, but for the laying hens, we do want to have a rooster for every dozen or so chickens, because they really deter the hawks and the other predators. And if there is a predator, particularly airborne, the rooster warns them. He lets out a signal that's clearly a warning. You can hear it far and wide. And the hens all run under the coop, because our coops are on wheels, and they all hide, and the rooster comes out and displays and attracts the hawk to himself to protect his progeny. And that's nature. Nobody has to teach them to do that. And so having the rooster does deter the hawks and any other predators that come. I think hawks are one of the big ones, but we have fox, and fox are sly. Tell them about that mangy fox. And
I don't know, I guess it was like 2 years ago, I noticed all the chickens were out and had been snowing, and the chickens also hate the snow. So I went in one door, and I looked in, and I didn't see anything. So I went to the other door, and there was nothing, and I thought it was really weird that, there was nothing there. And I turned around, and the fox was walking out. So I freaked out, because I was like, fox in a hen house! So I go running, and so I'm running around, trying to get all the chickens
You called me, and
back
I'm
in.
running over with a gun.
I called Andy, quick, come! And so, of course, by then,
He was
it's
gone.
long gone, but I was all worked up, and the chickens were all worked up.
He was burying the chickens he just killed in the chicken house to stash them. Yeah.
Yeah, in the corner.
And she was in there with him, and then she turned around, like, ah! And he was mangy, really nasty fox. Really nasty. The fox are so sly, we cannot catch them. We've tried a lot to catch the fox. We caught female bobcat in we have big cage traps, and it doesn't hurt them. We just capture them. And by mistake, we caught the female bobcat in it once, but we knew she had kittens, so we released her right away. And we've never seen the bobcat bother anybody, by the way. And so they're not our enemies, but the fox are. I don't like fox. And hawks are beautiful. We just did a hawk walk, by the way, at the farm, and it was amazing. We saw so many birds. It blew our minds. So many birds, and including hawks of many types. We were seeing bald eagles even. And but they do love chicken. It's like a neon sign, free range, organic chicken, eat here. And they come down. So, sorry, I lost it there. Roosters, it will also give you fertile eggs if you want to hatch out eggs, obviously. The hen can either sit on them or you can incubate them. They are a deterrent. So the basic chores daily: check your water, that's in your handout. Check your food, make sure everything's clean. Check the grit, crab or oyster shell. You can do one or the other, you don't have to do them all. I like kelp meal for minerals. Kelp meal is really good for them, and it makes the eggs stronger too. All these extra things, the oyster shell, you get stronger eggs if you give them something with calcium in them. Collecting your eggs, obviously, we do it twice a day, and get them in the fridge as soon as possible. You want to keep them at about 45 degrees. We wipe them. We don't submerge them. We wipe them off. But if the nests are clean, they're not. Mary did a lot of egg collecting. Were they usually fairly clean, Mary?
It depended on what time I'd get out there to get them. Some days it would be rough.
Then you got to wipe them off and pack them and get them in the fridge ASAP. You want to make sure that you keep them cool. Weekly.
I have a question about the refrigeration of eggs. I was reading something where in England, for example, they never refrigerate their
I know a lot of people don't, and honestly, I would say it wouldn't bother me, but we put on every one of our crates, we say keep it 45 degrees. It's just a safety measure, and people worry about stuff, and I don't worry too much about stuff. But if you want to make hard-boiled eggs, you want to leave them out for a while, because fresh eggs are impossible to peel or hard to peel. We can do it. I do it with a spoon and kind of get under the shell and lift off the shell. And but if you want them to be, if you want to make deviled eggs, I always leave them out for a couple of days, and they're much easier to peel when you boil them. I don't really worry too much about that stuff, and my kids rolled around in the mud all the time, and they never got sick. So you want to make sure it's clean. Weekly, you want to clean the pen if your birds are stationary, remove any manure and anything that's dirty, clean your nests, etc. Scrub off your containers and refill stuff, check for holes, repair any. And a monthly routine, and then every year, we typically get new chickens every year. 2 years old is about as old as you should. They're really not productive after 2 years. If you want to keep them as pets, that's fine. Any repairs, and use the bedding. If you're making a compost pile out of it, just put that in your garden and keep turning it, and it turns into really great compost, high nitrogen. And the bedding is the carbohydrate part. So pure chicken manure is too high in nitrogen to put straight on your garden. But if you compost it with the bedding, it's a great addition to the garden. Adds a lot of nitrogen.
What do you do with the chickens that you replace?
Well, yeah. We have them butchered, and we've done several things. We either donate them to, if we have them butchered at a state licensed slaughterhouse, we can donate them to Community Plates or some other place. And there's a hiring site in Mount Kisco that I go to called Neighbors Link, and there's a lot of people there from other countries that are just there to try and get a job, day laborers, and they're really thrilled to get a bunch of chickens, and they know how to kill them, and everybody gets to eat, and it's kind of a big party. And so I've done that. It's probably not okay with, it's probably not legal, but I do it anyway. I'm the chicken lady, and
That's with the hen chickens?
yeah.
I mean, the egg chickens?
Yeah, after they've stopped being productive, which is 2 years is really their limit. And they say you keep them longer, but they have canes and glasses and shawls, and people have old chickens that are pets. And anyway, so we bring our chickens to be butchered. If you can bring your live chicken to be butchered. A woman was at the farm the other day, and she said, "My chicken died. Where can I take it to get clean so I can eat it?" Well, I don't know how long her chicken had been dead, but a chicken has to be killed and eviscerated and plucked and everything immediately. You can't not take care of it immediately. So you can take it to Hemlock Hill Farm in Westchester. It's 20 minutes away. She's a state licensed poultry slaughterhouse, and she does a beautiful job. She's amazing. I don't know that you'd be able to get her to do one or two, but she might on her slow times, But it's Hemlock Hill Farm, and she's incredible, really great. She is getting her USDA slaughter license too, so she will be able to do USDA butchering as well as state licensed, which is great. There's not a lot of people around who'll do it for you. There's a guy in New Milford, but he's very hard. I don't even know if he's still doing it. And there's a Connecticut Poultry Association. They're working with a mobile poultry slaughter unit that's kind of moving around. It's supposed to be moving around the state. I don't know how well that's working. I know there's one in Martha's Vineyard where Jackie spent several years. There's it's a mobile poultry processing something, MPPU, yeah, MPPU, mobile probe. And they take it around to different farms and might kill 100 chickens at a time. And, you know, the guys who do it come with it, and you unload everything, and then you kill your chickens, and then it goes to the next farm. And that in places like the San Juan Islands, and where, you know, it's really hard to get somewhere in Martha's Vineyard. You have to take everything off island. Costs a fortune to get on the ferry with 100 chickens. So the mobile processing unit is perfect for the island. And, you know, the people on the island are thrilled about it. It's working out great. So the Connecticut Poultry Association is working on stuff like that. So those are 2 of our chicken coops, which we're all retiring into tiny houses. They're, you know, now tiny houses are so popular, so we can convert them to tiny houses if we ever have to. But Jackie says she wants a new one. She doesn't want to live in one that the chickens have been in. I don't blame her, really. But they're really beautiful. If you see them in person, I actually bought Coupe de Ville symbols on eBay, you know, and it's kind of because they're so gorgeous, and they're beautiful chicken houses. And in the wintertime, we put storm windows on those vents up top, and that's the portable fencing around them there. Some of the places you can get meat birds, and that's in your handout. And that's the chart. I believe you got a chart in your handout, yeah? And that's for hatching and brooding, and it takes you right up to the 16 to 20 week point. And if you're going to do it yourself, you really should keep track of what you're doing. That's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did I stay in my time frame?
No, you did.